I love working with writers that come from other industries because they don't realize that they bring other skills. The very first time that I ever went to a conference and pitched my novel that I wanted to publish, and people were telling me all these things, like, don't worry, these editors or these agents are likely going to reject, and that's okay, but go in and get whatever. And so I practiced this pitch, and then I walked in to there were four people that I wanted to pitch at this conference. It was my very first time. I hadn't published a novel yet. And I went in and pitched, and I got 4 yeses out of 4. And then I came out and people were like, what happened? And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. I know how to pitch. Doesn't mean I know how to write. They hadn't read a word of what I'd written yet, but I could take that skill because I actually worked on Wall Street for a time. And I also worked at a fund where we were taking pitches from actual companies or ideas. So I knew what a good pitch sounded like. I could do a good pitch, but that pitch became the basis for how I spoke to people about that book. And that is why I was able, when I went and, did a lot of in-person events and things to promote that book, so speak about marketing, I was able to use that basis of that pitch to speak to thousands and thousands and thousands of people and sell thousands and thousands of books, right? So don't count whatever that skill is that you have. I had no idea that was going to be useful as a writer, but it was.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 409 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Suzy Vadori, Calgary bestselling author of the Fountain series, the founder of the Inspired Writing Community, a resident writing coach for Writers Helping Writers, and the host of the Show Don't Tell Writing podcast. Suzy is all this and so much more, and you'll get to hear a fantastic conversation that we recently had, and that's coming up later in this episode. But first, speaking of Suzy, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor.
Hey writer, are you spending countless hours searching for answers to your writing questions but getting nowhere? It's time you stopped endlessly searching and tuned into the Show Don't Tell Writing podcast with me, Suzy Vadori, where I'll be your personal writing coach. It's a weekly podcast show where I bring you writing techniques, best practices, motivation, inspirational stories from real live authors out there making it in the world. And you'll also get tons of actionable advice that can help you turn that book you're writing into the bestseller you know deep down that it can be. Just search for Show Don't Tell Writing with Suzy Vadori where you listen to your favorite podcasts like this one, and I will see you over there.
It's just going to be a very brief introduction for this episode. So I will have links in the show notes obviously to Suzy's website and her own podcast, as well as a couple episodes of her podcast that I was on in the past month. And we had this conversation in, I think, early March. And gonna obviously be sharing it with you. It was funny, we had some tech problems, a couple tech problems. The first one was on Suzy's end when we first started the interview, so we started again. And then, oh my God, it was probably about 20 minutes into it, then my system completely crashed and my online, or my Wi-Fi, and I was completely out of the room, so we had to start a new meeting room and pick it up. But I've edited it together, so hopefully you can't tell where that mishap happened. And I know listeners have said that they do enjoy the when the cat walks into the room or something like that. But I do want to stream things and stitch things together and edit them in at least a way that you can enjoy and benefit from the conversation. In terms of personal updates, I'm going to keep this really short this week. I'm not going to get into comments from recent episodes, but I am going to say very quickly a shout out and thank you to all of those who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections. as well as my coffee buddies at buymeacoffee.com/Mark Leslie, and remind you that there's a very special audio-only podcast episode for my patrons and coffee buddies, and that is a sneak peek of the keynote I'll be giving this weekend at on Sunday, April 6th, for thebookfest.com, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes. This is a pre-recorded one, but I was so honored that I get to kick off day 2, which is a focus for writers. And that was pre-recorded, so I don't really have to do that work on Sunday, though I'm doing other work on Sunday. I love when I can be in 2 places at once. And then Monday morning, I fly off to Los Angeles, where I, as one of the judges of Writers of the Future, I get to spend the week working with the winners, the author winners, as a mentor, and leading some workshops to help them understand more about the business of writing and publishing. And then the fantastic gala event, which takes place in a beautiful venue, black tie event, on Thursday, April 10th. And I have the honor of bestowing one of the writers with the award, not the grand prize, but they're all winners who've been flown into LA to be treated kind of like author royalty for a week, and have this elaborate, amazing, gorgeous book launch. I'll be sharing pictures, etc., on social media. But I do, in my black tie, get to go up and give one of the awards to one of the writers as well. And that's always so exciting. And because this is the first year where I've actually read the stories as a judge. I was there last year. I just joined just a few months before the event, so they brought me in, and I got to again bestow one of the authors with an award. But this is exciting because I will have read many of the stories that made the final cut. So I'm pretty pumped to see, because I have no idea. I've read the stories. I have no idea who wrote the stories. And it was all curated from a whole bunch of different judges, and we all rated stories and stuff. So I'd be really curious to see who made it into the book, which will be launched that day. I think it was volume 41 of Writers of the Future. I'm curious to see the beautiful art that will have been designed. There's a day where we do the fantastic art reveal. And of course, the mass book signing, where all of the winners and the judges sign hundreds of copies of books that get shipped off to various pre-orders, as well as other markets as well. So it's going to be a very, very busy week in LA. So what I'm going to try and do is try and get episode 410 recorded ahead of time so I can pre-schedule that. Yeah, right, Mark. We know you better. You procrastinator, you. But that's it for Personal Update for now. I'm going to play the bumper, and you'll get a chance to hear my wonderful conversation with Suzy Vadori. Hey, Suzy, welcome back to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thank you so much for having me again, Mark. It's so good to be here.
It is great to chat with you. Now, you and I, of course, have chatted numerous times over the years, but the last time my listeners got a chance to hear from you, apart from some of the ads I've been running, they've heard your lovely voice in at the beginning of the episodes, but they haven't actually heard from you live, or Memorex, since what it was 2020, sometime during the pandemic. You were launching
the launch of Wall of Wishes. Yeah, we did a launch together. Thank you.
And that was a virtual. No, but you talked about working collaboratively with a bookstore for that series as well. Okay, so for those who are not fortunate enough to have listened to that episode, or potentially remember what we chatted about, can you give a bit of a background? So who is Suzy Vadori?
Oh gosh, if you find out who Suzy Vadori is, please let me know. I'm a writer. I'm also I'm an editor and a book coach. I've been writing for just over a decade. I wrote my first book on maternity leave, my third child, and she's turning 14 this year.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, right. I came from a business background. I was a business executive, and I always knew, it was just not one of those things I want to write a book. It was just I am going to write a book one day, and I didn't know
Right.
what it was going to be. I didn't know how to do it. And then I thought it'd be easy because I'm a crack person at spelling and grammar and all the things. And so I thought, oh, writing a book, that's not hard, right? Famous last words. So if you're listening to this podcast and you've ever been in that boat, you know what I went through, which is, writing that crappy first draft and thinking it's awesome and then realizing that it wasn't, but not really being able to find those resources out there to fix it. And so I ended up over the last 15 years, I ended up actually sort of making sets of rules and figuring out the patterns and talking to as many people as I can. I met Mark really early on in my writing career, which is awesome. Learned so much from him and from others figuring that out. And now I share that with other writers so that they can get beyond that learning curve really quickly and write that book that they know that they can.
Wow, cool. So yeah, so you've published books and done the author thing and then adapted some of the things you've learned. Now some of the things you've learned about
Absolutely.
writing and publishing, but also let's dig back into were you a marketing executive?
So, well, I mean, I do have a marketing degree. My bachelor's is a commerce degree in marketing. I've never actually worked directly in marketing, but I ended up working, and I've worked in sales and I've worked in products and I've worked in all kinds of different departments. I've worked in tech mostly and
Right.
then manufacturing. And I ended up as a chief operating officer, which oversees everything in a company. And so I've
Yeah.
built a number of startups from the scratch, like from scratch with the CEOs,
Right.
sort of as the right hand and figuring everything out. And so my main superpower, and I'm just figuring this out. It's funny how we get old, and we start learning more about why we're good at what we do.
Yeah.
And I've discovered that my main superpower is to take enormous amounts of information and like feed them into my brain, and it kind of works like an AI, and then it spits out like patterns. And
Right.
so that's actually what I did, and that's what I did for companies. And so, people look at my resume and go like, it's all over the map. It feels like it's all over the map, but it isn't. I'm like, put me in the biggest mess and I'll
Yeah.
fix it. Like, I'll figure this mess out. I'll explain to you why it's a mess and then we'll fix it. And so that's what I ended up doing with writing as well, was take this enormous amounts of information, read as much as I could and worked with as many editors and as many publishers and as many writers as I could and sort of found the patterns and spit that out as something that we can apply on a regular basis.
Awesome. I love that. I guess as well as a chief operating officer and doing that role of overseeing all the different pieces, that's kind of what an author is, right? In a mini sense for their own operations, right?
Absolutely. And there are so many parallels. So no matter what, I love working with writers that come from other industries because they don't realize that they bring other skills, right? And
Right.
Mark was there for this very first time, but the very first time that I ever went to a conference and pitched my novel that I wanted to publish. And people were telling me all these things, like, don't worry, these editors or these agents are likely going to reject, and that's okay, but go in and get whatever. And so I practiced this pitch, and then I walked in to four. There were four people that I wanted to pitch at this conference. It was my very first time. I hadn't published a novel yet. It was really a rough draft. Now I know that. I thought it was done. And I went in and pitched, and I got four yeses out of four. And then I came out and
Wow.
said, "Oh well," and people were like, "What happened?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. I know how to pitch." Doesn't mean I know how to write. They hadn't read a word of what I'd written yet.
Hmm.
But I could take that skill because I actually worked on Wall Street for a time. And I also worked at a fund where we were taking pitches from actual companies or ideas. So I knew what a good pitch sounded like. I could do a good pitch. And that pitch actually became that. Now that book wasn't ready at the time. It eventually became The Fountain. It took me 2 more years to find a publisher for The Fountain. But
Yeah.
that pitch became the basis for how I spoke to people about that book. And that is why I was able, when I went and did a lot of in-person events and things to promote that book, so speak about marketing, I was able to use that basis of that pitch to speak to thousands and thousands and thousands of people and sell thousands and thousands of books, right? so
Right.
so don't count whatever that skill is that you have. I had no idea that that was going to be useful as a writer, but it was.
That's fantastic. I love that. So you've taken this experience you've had as a writer, as a publisher, as an operations executive, and then are applying that. Let's talk about how you're applying that. And so what's the name of Suzy Vadori's business that she offers in terms of
Well,
helping writers?
it's Suzy Vadori, and
Well, that's very
actually, well, I have a
complicated.
couple, right? It's very complicated. I have a few things. I do have the Inspired Writing newsletter, which comes out weekly, and then I have my Show Don't Tell writing podcast. But
Okay.
everything is sort of under this Suzy Vadori umbrella, and I was reminded recently of how that happened. And I was at a conference for book coaches last month, and I found, like book coaches from all over the world and some amazing colleagues. And I found that sometimes they were exempting me from marketing discussions or saying, I hope you guys are listening. And they were saying things like, oh, well, Suzy, you have that all figured out, right? Like, but I'm still struggling with this. And I'm like, whoa, 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 right? Like, I'm 10 years to doing this. And, I didn't always want to, like, I actually resisted pretty hard using my name, Suzy Vadori, as the face of the business or the face of my writing. It's an uncomfortable thing, and that's the reason why lots of people use pseudonyms and things like that. And I hid behind company names. It started as Write It and became Inspired Writing, and now like all these
Yeah,
other
yeah.
names. And my idea was to have as many writers involved as possible and to lift everybody up along the way and to bring them along. And then I kind of realized, okay, Suzy, like you don't want to do it, all those things. Like you're the only one who's super interested in this business aspect of writing and making it big and wide and helping as many people as possible. And so it just kind of happened. And now I'm perfectly comfortable and confident using Suzy Vadori at suzyvadori.com. And like it's the business is Suzy Vadori.
Okay.
And
All right.
which I guess is me.
So authors who are listening to this, what are the things that Suzy Vadori can assist authors with? Like where at what stage in their career, and is it the writing? Is it the publishing? Is it the marketing? Like where is it that Suzy helps?
Yeah, so mostly in the writing, and then they bring in experts like Mark to help us with some of the promotional aspects and getting it, publishing aspects and getting it out there. But mostly the writing. And what I'm really passionate about is when people come to you and say, or you go out at a party or something, and people whisper in your ear, "Yeah, I'm writing a book too," or "I want to write a book," or "I have this book idea." You're being called to write a book, right? And
Yeah.
and the thing is like there's this myth out there that talent is all you need and that you could just go like rent a cabin in the woods and go out. It's in the movies, right? And we write a book over a weekend and then we come back and everybody says, oh my gosh, I had no idea you had such talent, right? And all these
Exactly how it happened to
things.
me. Every single
I'm
book. I
sure,
just
I'm
yeah.
sure. The cabin in the woods. Well, I could see it. If you're writing I think Mark and I, before we started recording, we're talking about what he's working on now. And is that number 36, right? Like book number 36. So it gets easier for sure, but there are real skills, real and learnable skills that you need to learn, be able to take that beautiful idea that's exploding in your mind, that's waking you up at night, that says, you're going to write this book, right? There are actual skills that you can learn. And that's what I really focus on bringing writers along. Now, I also have writers that work with me. I'm currently just got it in my inbox over the weekend. I'm currently working on book 3 with a writer who is published with Penguin. I'm currently working on a book 5. Like there are writers that come back throughout their career, but where I can make the biggest impact is really if writers are in that stage where they have that great idea and they've already tried a bunch of things and they've read some books, it's just not clicking, and people are still saying, because
Right.
I got this too, that first draft where people are like, it's got a great start. Keep going. You'll get there. And I'm like, well, what do I need to do? What do you mean it's almost there? Like, what
Yeah.
does that even mean? Right. So
Yeah.
it's sort of breaking it down into brass tacks and showing people specifically in their writing what they can do to make it awesome for the reader. Because
Okay.
your idea is good. I guarantee that your idea is good. It's like just how do you get it on the page in a way that it gets into the reader's head the same way that it's in your head and
So
not
it,
like gobbledygook.
it almost feels like a lot of the editing you're doing is developmental work with the writer to help mold and form it into the thing it needs to be. Like they have a vision, they have an idea, and you help because you're taking that
Absolutely.
operations officer approach, where you're taking all those
Yeah.
pieces and you're helping them, and then you put it through. We're not going to call it the AI of your brain. We're going to call it the SV. We put it through the SV, and then
Sweet.
you help come up with some sort of cohesive thing in the direction of where they want it to be.
Yeah, and in the direction of where they want it to be, what you just said is the key to that, because not everybody's dream is the same. So I have authors who have, signed pretty big contracts with Big Five. Cool. That was their goal, and they were willing to make the choices,
Yeah,
sacrifices sometimes. They were willing to make the choices along the way to give themselves the best chance
right.
of getting in that direction. Lots of writers aren't willing to make those choices, and that's okay, right? Like there are so many other publishing paths, and we're on the right podcast for that. There are so many other publishing paths, and so I spend a lot of time up front understanding what the writer's goals are, and it's not about me trying to impose what I think or what.
Yeah,
I mean, I give lots of ideas, but it's not about take my ideas my way or the highway. It's like, hey,
right.
here's why it's not like, okay, this part of the book isn't landing. Here's why I think it isn't landing. Here's some possible solutions. Now you
Right.
don't have to take my solutions, right? You're the
Yeah.
god of your story. Um, so sometimes a lot of times writers will come back and say, hey, I hear you, I understand it, but I don't like that for this, that, or the other reason.
Right.
Well, here's how I think I can fix it a different way. And then they're like, can I do that? Of course they can do that. It's their story.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that. So
yeah.
cool. So let's talk about some of the properties you put out. So you talked about the weekly newsletter, and it was using the name of one of the business, sorry, one of the ideas for the business that
Yeah,
you.
inspire. It's called the Inspired Writing, and
Okay.
so the community is Inspired Writing, and it has a weekly newsletter that's gone out at least once a week for 4 years. So it's just kind of that nice touch point. It's where I invite people to free events. It's where I tell people about my courses. It's where I also just talk about writing life and try to give a glimpse behind the scenes of
Okay.
what it's like to be a writer, both for myself and for people within the broader community that I'm aware of, right?
Okay.
So if you're looking for a place to learn what the inside background, like what's really like, that's where you go.
Okay. Cool.
Um, yeah.
And that just comes into
And
your
you can,
inbox. It's a free newsletter,
yeah,
right? Okay.
free newsletter, absolutely. And I get replies every single week from people that are doing whatever. And lots of times people hang out on that newsletter for years. And
Yeah.
maybe eventually they come take a course, maybe eventually work with me on one of their books, or maybe they don't. Right. And it's all good. And that community also has a free Facebook group,
Right.
which has about 1,500 writers in it. And the newsletter itself is about 12,000 writers. So
Okay.
12,000 writers every single week opening that newsletter, part of the community. It's just a touch point, right?
Yeah.
And we always answer. Like when people answer, I'm kind of slow at it. I do it, a couple times a month. I'll
Yeah.
go through and answer everybody's, but I do care about it. And I hear like, what are you doing? And if you just need a place to be like, hey, I'm writing a book and nobody else cares, like nobody wants to know about it, tell
Yeah.
me. I love to hear about it.
That's cool. Now you talked about you said courses. So you occasionally offer courses. Is it courses specific to, that writing, editing, the craft, the developmental stuff, or what are the courses usually?
Yeah. Yeah, so the main course or my signature course is the Wicked Good Fiction Boot Camp. Now, it's called fiction, but it's actually good for fiction or memoir. And that is a self-directed course. It's 8 weeks long, and it will give you like if you've got a messy draft and you're not sure how to get it to the finish line,
Okay.
that's sort of what it's designed for. I've also had people use it to write a book from scratch. So it's got all those things. So when I became a book coach, which kind of happened in a backward way, when I became a book coach, I found like the first 3 months of working with people, I was telling them the same things over and over and over again. I'm like, writers are, again, that pattern, that SV, AI in my brain, there's patterns to it, right? And so, what are the things that are hard to learn, hard to find, and elevate your writing immediately, right? Like, what are those things? And so I put together this 8 week course that was basically supposed to replace that 8 weeks of coaching, because, I want more people to be able to access it. So that's the Wicked Good Fiction Bootcamp. And then periodically I run other courses as well. I've done month-long developmental editing mentorships where I teach you to developmentally edit your own work, right? So it's all about gaining perspective and how do you get that sort of perspective on your own work and what are the tools? And I actually share the exact tools that I use to evaluate writers' manuscripts when I do a developmental edit
Oh,
in that
cool.
course. And then I do all kinds of other one-offs throughout the year, whatever's sort of going on.
Okay, so you've got this really great text-based thing that's free, people can sign up for and they get it every week. But for those who aren't, maybe they don't want to read, then maybe they want to listen. Is that what the podcast Show Don't Tell is all about?
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's back up there for a second because if you're a writer, please read.
Well,
It
no,
doesn't
no,
mean
but I
you have
mean,
to
like,
write
just maybe,
something. Yeah, I get it.
multitaskers, people who are commuting
Yeah,
and driving and they want to listen because they can't, it's dangerous to read while you're driving. I've heard.
absolutely. Absolutely. I've heard that. Yeah, I love the advent of the audiobook because yeah, I was that person who if I was really into a novel, like and there was a long red light, I might sneak a glance of the page, like only when I'm stopped. All right, so now with audiobooks, I can read and drive all the time. Actually, one quick aside, when I used to live in Toronto,
Yeah.
long before I became a writer, I would try to run and read because I hate running and I love reading, and it didn't actually work.
You with a
Um,
book you were running?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
geez. That's dangerous.
yeah. I don't know if it's dangerous. It's just
Fell
like
into
it
a few
work.
holes.
It's never really work. I tried though. I'm like
You've
the
heard of
queen of the
headphones,
podcast.
right? Like that's a thing.
Yeah, well, but that was before. That was in the
Okay.
before times. Okay,
Okay.
so here I'm old, Mark, remember. Okay, so we're talking about the podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. So I resisted having a podcast for a long time. So
Right.
if you followed me for a while and you asked me about marketing, I would tell you pick one thing. Don't do all the things. There's 1,000 things you can do. Pick one thing,
Yeah.
show up, be consistent. And people will say to me, but Suzy, other than the weekly newsletter, because I don't think I can do something consistently, what is the thing? And I'm like, no, no, that's the thing. That's the thing I've been doing for a long time, 5 years, right? 4 or 5 years.
Right, right.
And then I was finally ready to add one more thing. So the
Sure.
podcast is really about, yeah, bringing just another voice or another way to connect with people because it is becoming, email's noisy and not everybody reads every email. And I understand that. But yeah, the podcast is a way that I can sort of coach people in their ear all the time and also bring on awesome guests and just have content. So there's actually four different things I do on my podcast. The
Okay.
first one is bring on guests, and I try to bring on guests. I get pitched all the time for sort of writers or whatever, and I only take people at this point. Maybe I'll run out of people that I know, but I only take people that I know and follow and can have like a really deep conversation. It's not like because I only want to support people I know. That's not it. It's like I don't want to do the typical, podcast where it's like, oh, what how did you think about your idea for your book and all those things, right? Like
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to get the nitty-gritty and the real behind the scenes. Like what's it really like to be a writer? How did you build your career? And when I have people on there that I followed for a long time or that I understand their career from the ground up, we can have a totally different conversation. The
Right.
second thing I do is craft. So I do solo episodes that are just on craft, and those tend to be the most popular over time, I think, because people are trying to find that information. A lot of the information you can find on my podcast. Then I do live coaching sessions,
Okay.
which are yeah, which are a ton of fun. So people can submit one page of their writing that they know is telling, and I will go through and coach them on how to change it into showing, right? We brainstorm together.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. There's a ton of those episodes out there. People can submit a page of their writing. Don't submit something that you think is awesome for me to rubber stamp and be like, good job. Submit something that you're actually struggling with, and I'll help you. And then the fourth thing that I do is live Q&As. So if I do a live Q&A at any point in time, which I do all the time, that shows up on the podcast as well.
Oh, that is awesome. That is really cool. So all this stuff that you're doing, right, with the Suzy
Yeah.
Vadori business of helping writers, are you still writing? I mean, is your writing itself taking a
Yeah.
back seat because you're helping writers?
Well, I mean, yes and no. So I haven't written, I mean, I have written two other novels that are not out yet. They're currently with my agent. So
Okay.
hopefully one of those will sell and be out there. So I'm writing, definitely. And I'm
Okay.
currently writing a nonfiction book on writing, show don't tell. It's show don't tell writing, and so it's a little bit meta.
Oh, it's very on
So
brand.
right? It's very on brand because it's like I've got all this stuff in my head and I have a different way of teaching it. It's not just tired writing advice. It's like this actual phenomenon that I get really excited about and could talk about all day long.
Right.
But I'll spare you today. But yeah, so because writers work on that skill their entire career, and so it's not just like beginner writing advice is my point.
Right.
So I'm writing a whole book on that, which should be out or should, you know, it's on proposal right now.
Okay.
So I'm doing writing, but I feel like, yeah, I mean, has my writing taken a backseat? It has, but it's been a choice. It's been a choice. I really love, love, love. I work on about 100 books a year with other writers through my courses, like, you
Yeah.
know, little snippets of it, and probably about 50 books where I'm actually editing on a regular basis, either book coaching or editing at the end. And so I feel so fulfilled. I'm so excited for those writers when they get them out into the world. So I'm okay taking a back seat. If you're not okay taking a back seat, don't do what I do, right? Like,
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
okay because it's about getting all those voices out to the world. And I have 1,000 ways now to get my voice out into the world. And I
Right.
write something every day, whether it's a newsletter to you guys or an article for the blogs that I write for, or, like there's writing involved all the time. I feel super happy about where my writing is at, to be honest.
Oh, that's
Will there be
fantastic.
more novels? There will. There will. But am I working on one right this very second? No.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So let's go back to young Suzy Vadori, who was working on that first novel.
Young-ish. I think I
Young.
was 40 when it came out. Young-ish, Suzy
So,
Vadori.
well, I prefer to use the term young. So, young Suzy Vadori, who's just getting started, just writing her first novel. If you could reach back in time and offer her or any other writers in a similar situation some advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it's just that it takes time. Like I've actually tried to wrap my head around it. I've written blog posts, I've written things on this concept of like that first book syndrome, right?
Yeah,
Like why does it take so long to write that first book? I don't mean your crappy first draft. I mean like actually get it out there and get it to
yeah,
the point where it can be a bestseller. It can be like because you've done the work. And there's all this doubt, right? Because of, I talked about earlier on the podcast, this myth that you should be able to be born and write, and that's how writers are born. No, there are things that, and you guys can't see Mark smirk right now because he appreciates how ridiculous that is, right? But we think that it's the skill that we're either born with or we're not. That can be immensely frustrating to think, oh, I don't have the talent.
yeah,
So I mean, eventually I figured out that there were those real and important skills to learn to make sure that your words on the page actually resonate with readers. And I wish that people could learn that faster.
right,
Because I find that people are faster at their second book for that reason. And it's not that I mean, sure, they've learned all the things, so therefore it's faster, maybe, but it's not that. It's that they don't spend all this time thinking it should be faster, right? They don't spend all this time thinking, what is wrong with me? I just like, and all this self-doubt and all this like, do I just, and you know what? On the second book, people say, okay, I now understand it takes hundreds and thousands of hours, and I just do it. And you don't spend all that time, waste all that time wallowing or arguing or listening to another podcast or talking to another writer or getting a third opinion. You have to do the work. And that's the only way that your book gets done. It's the only way that your book gets good. It's the only way that your book matches. And when I say good, that's subjective, yes, but matches the dream that you have in your brain, matches that idea that you have, and will get into your reader's brain. You got to do the work and you got to learn what that work is, but you also have to get past that sort of mental block that it should be easier. This like write a book in 30 days and all that stuff. It just makes me crazy. Yes, you can do that eventually. When you know how to do it, if that's your style. I'm not a fast writer. I do have colleagues who can write a book in 6 weeks, but what they mean is they draft it and then they work on it and then they get it out. And there's other steps to that process, right?
right.
So don't be fooled.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you spending time with me today, sharing your wisdom and advice and feeling inspired to write here. Where can people find Suzy Vadori online?
Yeah, well, suzyvadori.com, hop on there. You can take a look at all my offerings. My courses are on there. My book coaching and editing is on there. And also, you can hop on the mailing list there. And also, my Show Don't Tell Writing podcast. I'd love to have you guys all come take a listen and see what it's all about.
Awesome. And we will have links to all those things in the show notes at starkreflections.ca. Suzy, thanks again for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, see you soon.
I wanted to reflect on one of the many awesome things that Suzy talked about, and one of them is based on the teaser clip that opened up this episode, because I think it's so important. And it's the concept that Suzy shares that she likes to help people with, people approaching the author business, is leveraging the skills outside of writing to help your writing business. Now, longtime listeners of this podcast will know that I love bringing in guests who aren't necessarily writers first and foremost. I love bringing in other creative people. I've had artists and cartoonists and designers and musicians and actors and people not necessarily specifically writing prose or whatever it is, like, nonfiction, fiction writers, whatever, because I know that there's so much that we can learn from other industries, from other approaches, from other creative people. But similarly, there's always there's things we bring in from stuff that is not even adjacent to writing and creativity, and it's so important. So think about your own situation. What is it that you are really good at outside of writing? What is it you're something really passionate about outside of writing? What is it that you have either made a career out of or that you have worked at? And are there elements from that realm that can benefit you as a writer? Yeah, for sure. They can benefit you potentially in the creation of characters, because you can understand characters who work in different roles in society, etc., because you have that experience. I have had experience working as a security guard, as a theater technician, doing acting on stage. I have experience working in the tourism industry. I have retail experience as well. I have done manual labor jobs, working at a lodge, cutting grass professionally, on a grass cutting crew, landscaping, doing stuff like that, and even tapping maple trees and being out there and being all part of that process, splitting wood and gathering, cleaning and all of the various roles and tasks that I've had. So when I'm thinking about how I'm going to apply this to either the business of writing and publishing, or potentially even for the creative aspects, I can sometimes lean back on those skills, those experiences. And I'm willing to bet if you take the time and you think about the various things that you have done, either volunteer work, education-wise, labor-related, that you have done, you've probably got some skills that you can bring to the table that can either help your writing, your creativity, creating more dynamic elements in your fiction, because they're brought to life by actual understanding and experience, which is fantastic. There's potentially elements you can apply to the writing business. And importantly, because this, I love the community aspect of writing and publishing, you might be able to leverage what you know and understand about something outside of writing that can help other writers understand and put it in context. So the challenge I have for you is to consider what one or two of those things, what they might be, how you might apply them for writing. And I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear your reflections on some of those elements that you bring to the table that are not directly related to writing. Now, I just got in the mail just yesterday, I just got some books from Denise Baden, who was on a recent episode, and her passion for environmentalism and sustainability, etc. And all three of the books that I got from her are books, obviously, that she's written, fiction and nonfiction and script, etc., but they're all related to this aspect of her life that she knows and lives and understands, and she's able to apply that and create some really exciting content, both fiction and nonfiction, for that. So again, what are those things that you come up with? I'd love to hear. Please leave your comments at starkreflections.ca. You can email them to me directly. Tag me on the social medias, anywhere, YouTube, where this podcast audio feed is always going to every week. Love to hear what you've come up with and share those, of course, with other reflective listeners. But that is it for this episode. So until next week and until next episode, I want to say thank you so much for listening. I am, as always, Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and I'm here to wish you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.